I'm really excited that Jackie Sheeler is going to read a piece called War and Peace in New Jersey.
Thank you. Before I read it, though, I have to say, and I'm going to keep it short, or else it would suck, right? But I have to say a couple things. You know, I listened, Karen. I was greatly touched by your introduction of this day and all the people that you thanked, and the fact that you talked about how privileged you were to have known Richard. And I did not hear you say how privileged he was to have you in his life. And that is so crystal clear. And what I want to say to you is, when I die, I want a Karen Lillis there to notice. Thank you. And as a side note, regarding Bob Holman and the Bowery Poetry Club in general, this is not an unusual event. Is this a moneymaker for the club? Is this something that's going to get them on the front page of the Times? No, it's something that's the right thing to do, and that's what Bob does. So you may notice this. I am Troy Davis. I'm not Troy Davis. Troy Davis has been in death row in Georgia for 20 years, and we're doing an event here to raise awareness about him on May 19th, and Bob has also generously donated the club for that. That's what this place does. I mean, not that they don't make money. God almighty, please buy a drink. But there's this other thing happening. This is not just a business. This is a place for hearts and souls and lives and progress and humanity. So I'll leave it at that. War and Peace in New Jersey. World War II. I remember the details you don't find in the history books. During the war, the headlights looked like eyes, the top half painted black so that the lights wouldn't shine up. This was that so that the enemy planes, not that there were any, wouldn't see the cities from the sky. When the war was over, it was difficult to scrape the paint off. The headlights were made of corrugated glass. The headlights were painted to avoid the attention of German bombers. Well, there were no German bombers. With England, Hitler had a blitzkrieg, a lightning war. He went in with dive bombers, with submarines, with tanks, and zapped their cities, but everything was short-ranged. This was how he lost the war in Russia. He planned to just go in there and pull one quick punch after another, but it didn't work against the Russian army. Hitler had no long-range tactics. He was never going to get all the way across the Atlantic and bomb Jersey City. But that didn't stop them from having anti-aircraft guns set up in North Street Park, pointing towards the moon. This was a block from my house. I had a toy during World War II that was a wooden replica of a Thompson submachine gun, a Tommy gun. This gun has a special place in Jersey history. They didn't manufacture it fast enough for it to be used in World War I, but they made a lot of it around that time, the end of the war. Then there was a flood of them in the underground market, so mafia bootleggers in the 1920s started using them. This was a new kind of weapon. It could fire 100 pistol bullets in no time flat. This made the mob quite dangerous. It seems the bad guys got hold of this gun before the cops did, although the police did finally catch up. Of course, now you have automatic rifles that fire larger bullets at a higher velocity, but in those days, this was a big contrast to a rifle or a handgun. After World War II, you had men coming back from the war with German pistols, guns they had confiscated during the war. There were no metal detectors to find them in their suitcases, and nobody cared anyway. The gun was like a souvenir, I think. Everyone figured that a soldier had earned it by being in combat. The men would come home and put it in a drawer. Sometimes they'd tell you a story and take the gun out of the drawer to show you, then put it away again. So in Jersey City, after the war, there were all these Nazi guns around. Saturday nights during the war, the area around the Union City transfer station looked like a U.S. Navy base. You could walk down certain side streets and see the men lined up in formation, and their officers would be giving them orders. This was a unit known as the Shore Patrol. They were Navy men trained in the rules and regulations, and their job was to rein in the sailors who got drunk and abusive. On a Saturday night, of course, the area was crawling with sailors carousing at all the clubs. This area was known as the Bowery Coast, war or no war. So the men of the Shore Patrol were there in their white uniforms with a pistol on one hip and a club on the other, and their officers would give them orders like which nightclubs to cover. You get the Zoom Zoom Club, and you get the Melody Club. One night in 1942, I was passing a bar in Jersey City just south of the transfer station. This was an Irish place with walls painted green. O'Malley's, O'Grady's, Son of Aaron, I forget the name, something Irish. It was a basement bar with steps going down to the front door. I had a Daily News under my arm that I had been sent to fetch from my father. It was early evening. Passing this bar, a sailor came flying outside, landed on the sidewalk, and missed me by 2 feet. I tell you, I didn't want to meet this bouncer. He threw the sailor straight up the steps and onto the sidewalk in one swing. Walter Winchell was a famous newspaper columnist of the 1940s. He also had a Sunday night radio show. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. North and South America and all the ships at sea. Let's go, press, flash. That was his opening line every Sunday to get the people ready for a World War II work week. I was 12 when the war ended. When I heard the news, I ran out onto Summit Avenue shouting, "The war is over! The war is over!" But it had a funny pitch to it. My voice was changing just at that time, and my mother teased me about it for years to come. "The war is over! The war is over!" she'd say in a warbly voice. Military service. I didn't even have my high school diploma yet, and they sent me my draft notice. They wanted to send me to Korea. I enrolled in NYU to get a draft deferment, but when I got out, they were waiting for me. Thankfully, we were out of Korea by then, so I got drafted into the Army in peacetime. From 1956 to 1958, I was with an Army anti-aircraft missile battalion in Westchester County. I was sent for training in Fort Dix, New Jersey, 10 weeks in the sand. In 1956, I was still wet behind the ears. This boot camp was like bad comedy. We crawled under barbed wire with machine gun fire going over our heads. Every once in a while, they'd shoot a flare so we could see how close the bullets were flying. 2 fellows got cut in half when the machine gun above us slipped off its tripod and pointed the wrong direction. Another time, a barracks got hit by an Air Force airplane that went awry. "You call this training? Don't wake me for combat." These incidents got into the Jersey papers. So every time something happened, I had to call my mother and tell her a plane didn't hit the barracks. Nobody got cut in half. There was a guy in training with us. His last name was Harris. Every time it was his turn to practice the hand grenade, he would drop it. So we called him Hand Grenade Harris. I tell you, when it was time for Hand Grenade Harris to throw, everyone was away.